Hello everybody and welcome to another episode of Box Office Talk. This is the show where I break down what happened at the box office, see if my predictions for the top 5 are correct, then make predictions for next week's top 5. So let's get right on into it. Last week I predicted that number 1 would be The Little Mermaid, number 2 would be Fast X, number 3 would be Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, number 4 would be the Super Mario Bros. Movie, and number 5 would be About My Father. And I only got 4 out of 5 of my predictions right for this week, and I was so close. and congratulations to everybody who actually picked the right one. In a weekend where there was 4 movies coming out, and actually there's a couple more because Becky didn't make it into the top 10 at all. But there are 4 movies coming out really that had a chance to get into the top 5, and I didn't really think any of them would make big waves. So it was kind of like, okay, which of these low grossers is going to really have potential to squeak on in here, you know? Because we're in a time in a box office where, you know, these movies normally, you know, a couple years ago probably would have done a little okay, but now we're at a point where movies that have been out for so long, like a Super Mario Bros, can hold over, you know, better than they can. You know, but let's go over what happened in the overall top 10. Number 1 was obviously The Little Mermaid, and I probably should address right now because I'm doing this video on Sunday. I'm not going to be covering the Memorial Day, like 4-day weekend numbers, but this movie is obviously looking to open like around 120 million. It's not an exact number yet. We don't have that figure yet, but it's looking to obviously open a little higher, which, you know, that I think some people were saying it would make it like the 4th highest opening weekend for that 4-day Memorial Day thing. So, I mean, hey, whenever that happens, you know, congratulations. But for this 3-day weekend, it made $95 million, so that it debuted with that. As far as some of the other Disney remakes go, bear with me because instead of having like a list, you know, of the website I use, thenumbers.com, I had to like, you know, really like go in and make sure I wasn't forgetting any remakes and like look it up myself, try to make my own chart, because I believe Box Office Mojo used to have lists like that where you could be specific, like, okay, you want a list of like Disney remakes and how they did financially, here you go. But since Box Office Mojo got revamped by, I believe, IMDb, and they don't really have those anymore, the numbers comes close to having that stuff, but not really, or at least not that I found right away. So please bear with me because I might be forgetting one. I tried not to, but as far as the other live action Disney remakes go, it had an opening 4 million above the Aladdin 3-day opening weekend, and it's only behind the Jungle Book 2016 by 8 million. So this is a pretty good one. It is actually the 5th highest opening weekend from what I could gather for a live action remake. This is obviously, like I said, behind the Jungle Book, but also Beauty and the Beast and The Lion King. Some other Alice in Wonderland too, the 2010 one, which is technically not a remake, it's a sequel, but I mean, they remake so many of the plot elements, it's like, that counts, you know what I mean? Domestically, it has already outgrossed Cruella, which is the Disney remake equivalent of like a Maleficent, by $9 million, Alice Through the Looking Glass by $18 million, and Peach Dragon by $19 million, and now it needs $18 million until it outgrosses Maleficent, Mistress of Evil's entire domestic run. So as far as the other Disney remakes, you know, it's looking like it's gonna outgross a lot of like the lower grossing ones, the less successful ones, and really compete with the higher earners, you know? Probably not to the same degree of like The Lion King or Beauty and the Beast, but the other ones for sure, you know? As far as the original film as well, it is already behind that one by 16 million domestically. So obviously that was a different time at the box office in 1989. So as much as that movie made a lot of money back then, you know, cashing in on the memory of that film and making it live action and acting like it's the biggest event you'll ever fucking see, you know, that's obviously going to make more money these days. What can you do? Worldwide, as far as the original film goes, it is now sitting at 163 million, and it is behind the original film by 59 million, so we'll be seeing it outgross that one like by next weekend. As far as the other Disney remakes, it has already outgrossed Peach Dragon by 26 million, but it still needs 62 until it's there with Cruella. Worldwide, it didn't have as big of a boom as maybe I was expecting, and you know, these numbers can maybe alter by the end of the Memorial Day weekend, not just because we have that extra day finalized, but you know, maybe some other places will report their earnings. Don't really know, you know, from what we're seeing right now, it's not really that big of a gap, like considering like, okay, the 95 million it just made domestically makes up a lot of that 163 million for the worldwide total. That's not really a big boom worldwide, you know what I mean? But you know, what can you do? You know, it's probably still going to be able to double its $250 million budget at the very least. I am wondering though, because you know, sometimes the Disney remakes can hold over well. They're kind of inconsistent where sometimes they're released at the appropriate time where they hold over, and you know, maybe there's a strong word of mouth about a particular one, but then some of them, you know, do tend to drop. So we'll see how it goes in the second weekend, but obviously right now it's, you know, it's doing great. you know, as most of these live action Disney remake cash grabs go, you know what I mean? That's usually how it goes. And, you know, to be fair, this one is getting, I believe I saw a tweet like it's getting the best critical reception since Beauty and the Beast in 2017 as far as like the Rotten Tomatoes numbers go. Like I believe just the critic score, because I believe the audience score is usually pretty high for these. So I mean, hey, there you go. That's good for them. Like I said, we'll see what happens next weekend if it has a big drop domestically or if it holds over really well. It's got big competition, so that will be interesting to say the least, as well as seeing where else it goes worldwide. That's all I'll really say for now. Let's move on to number 2, Fast X. Now, last weekend it opened pretty big. Had a pretty big worldwide number 2. However, in its second weekend, it kind of did something that I was kind of thinking it would. It dropped by a little over 65%. So like last weekend it made around 67 million, very close to 70. This weekend it made $23 million. This did not have a great hold at all, really. In fact, last weekend I was saying it's still behind Too Fast, Too Furious. With this domestic weekend, it now adds to a total of 107 million. So they are still behind Too Fast, Too Furious by $20 million. It is not advanced in the Fast and the Furious ranking yet as far as the domestic runs. Now, worldwide, it did a little bit. It is now sitting at $507 million. So it has outgrossed the fourth one, Fast and Furious, by $148 million, and it now needs 122 until it catches up with Fast 5, which I think we will definitely be seeing happen. But it's interesting, you know, because it came out, you know, really swinging, and then, you know, that drop off, it just kind of goes to show you, like, some people may have found this new one entertaining, and then there's some people who said, like, hey, you kind of know what you're going to get at this point. What am I even doing talking about this movie, or any movie, really? You're going to see it whether you're going to see it or not, you know? And I really do think, like, these opening, Fast and the Furious is now at a point where the opening weekend is front-loaded with all the fans who are going to see it, and then the weekends to follow, you know, they're not going to match up, you know, or they're not going to hold over well, you know, maybe matchup isn't that fair, but still, kind of a bummer, I think, for this franchise that Universal allegedly, according to Vin Diesel, said they wanted, you know, 2 more films after this, which is why I was thinking, like, that's weird, because I don't really see Fast and the Furious, you know, where it is critically, where it kind of is with the other movies, how Hobbs and Shaw and F9 kind of dropped off financially. Not really dropped off because they made money, but like compared to like Fate of the Furious and Furious 7, they have yet to make another sequel to hit $1 billion. Now, maybe Fast X will have the legs worldwide to get there, but as of right now, it's kind of like, and domestically, at least, it's showing like, yeah, the attention to this is kind of waning, you know? And with this budget of $340 million, the standard for this show, even though we know it's not exactly accurate, but it's the best thing we got to, you know, a rule of, will this movie break even? Will it be considered a success? You gotta double it. And right now, with that 507 million worldwide total, that's everything, they still need 173 million to actually cross over that point. Now, I think we'll be seeing that happen, but for a movie with this big a budget, I think you need to actually crack $1 billion, you know, to really, like, prove, like, yeah, we're here to stay. This franchise is here to stay, and it's worth this money. It's weird because, like, the next movie we're going to talk about, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, that's an expensive movie, $250 million, but it looks expensive. This movie, you know, not to, you know, opinions are opinions, whether you know, like the movie or not, that's totally fine. But I think it's fair to say, like, even if you like the movie, it doesn't really look all that expensive. You know, it does have some visual ugliness to it, like as far as like how they use CGI to cover up a lot of stuff. Like, it doesn't really look that expensive. All they have are like expensive names rounding out the cast, but that's not worth it if the movie's just gonna be kind of, you know, whatever. Of course, if you liked it, that's totally fine. Let's move on to number 3, though, which is Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, which is still holding over very well. This will feed into my predictions for next weekend later. But it made $19 million this weekend. Now, picture this. Fast X, great opening, dropped down by 65-ish% into the 20s. Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 opened pretty big, bigger than Volume 1, but not as big as 2. Some people were already calling it a failure, but then it held over well. And then it also continued to hold over well when Fast X came out. So, we're now at a point where Fast X is in its second weekend, it's dropped, Little Mermaid is here making money, and Guardians, you know, I'm not expecting Guardians to, make as much money as The Little Mermaid did. It did with Fast X because of the timing of the release and also just the range of difference between how much Fast X was going to get and how Guardians was holding over pretty well. So obviously not, but right now, holding over that well from like last weekend's 30 million and before that 60, before that 110, not even dropping, this is rough estimate, I don't remember the exact numbers, but the point still stands. It's holding over so well that it's like, when Fast X is dipping in its second weekend, Guardians is kind of around what money they're making in its fourth. That's saying something. I really do think what I said a couple weeks ago, that Guardians 3 will be able to overtake this movie next weekend. I think it's going to hold over so very well. We'll get to that in a bit, though, when we get to the official predictions. But that adds to a domestic total of $299 million. For the Guardians films, it's $34 million behind Volume 1 and $90 million behind Volume 2. Catching up with those pretty fast, For the MCU, it is still behind Iron Man 2 by $13 million, but worldwide it is sitting at $731 million. For the Guardians films, it is $39 million behind Volume 1, $138 million behind Volume 2. For the entire MCU, it has outgrossed Doctor Strange by $55 million and now needs $29 million until it outgrosses Thor: Love and Thunder. So this movie, it may not be able to crack $1 billion, but the fact that it's inching so closer to finally outgrossing those other Guardians films at a time where some people were, even though it opened bigger than Volume 1, they were doubting that it would outgross it. They thought the superhero fatigue was going to set in and people don't really like this movie. It's going to drop hilariously. And then it didn't. And it actually has a pretty good chance. I'm not sure, if it will be able to squeak by, outgrossing 2 worldwide or domestically. Domestically, maybe a bigger chance. But I mean, shit, it's held over so well. It's like, I haven't seen a hold like this for a big comic book movie in quite a while. You know what I mean? Like Avatar: The Way of Water and Puss in Boots had some pretty great holds. And this movie kind of ranks up with them as far as like, yeah, this is not just going to, fade away like a Fast X, it's here to stay. So that's pretty amazing, and I think that's pretty cool. And it's $19 million away from tripling its $250 million budget. If there, was any doubt that this movie was going to be, a financial success, especially when you pit it against Fast X. Have they made any money yet? Probably not, because they haven't doubled that budget. Let's move on to number 4, which is the Super Mario Bros. Movie, making $6 million, adding to a domestic total of $558 million. So it still needs $50 million until it outgrosses Incredibles 2 for the number 13 spot. I don't think it's going to get there at this point, but hey, nice effort. Worldwide, though, now that it's sitting at $1.276 billion, it has already outgrossed Incredibles 2 by $34 million and Beauty and the Beast 2017 by $8 million, and now needs $8 million until it outgrosses Frozen, and then it, enters number 19. It's going to be the number 19 highest grossing worldwide run of all time. But with this, that means it's already in the top 20, which is a pretty good achievement. Domestically, it can't crack the top 10, but, worldwide, it just entered the top 20, which is pretty big. That's a pretty big deal. This is a good summer for Chris Pratt. And Vin Diesel kind of on and off because he's in Guardians, but, he also is in Fast X, and it's not looking that great. Let's move on to number 5, the movies, and they're all lined up in a row. The movies that I thought there's no chance of them all getting into the top 5, but one of them will, and I thought it would be the De Niro one, but it was actually The Machine. I was thinking like it was this or About My Father that was going to get in. I thought maybe because of De Niro, that one would squeak in, but I guess Luke Skywalker and whoever the stand-up comedian is, who I've never seen a stand-up bit from, was enough to push over. It made $4.9 million though, and with no worldwide total right now, it has not crossed over its initial production budget of $20 million and is nowhere close to doubling it at this point. Maybe when worldwide numbers come in, if they do come in ever, maybe we'll have a different story. I'm not expecting this to have the crazy hold the Guardians or Puss in Boots did, so, let's not get ahead of ourselves, though. The director previously directed the Key and Peele film Keanu. No, Jordan Peele didn't do that one, in case maybe some people were confused. It had an opening $5 million below Keanu, though. And it's $16 million away from outgrossing Keanu. So it's not looking good. It doesn't look like it's going to outgross Keanu, and it doesn't look like it's going to make its money back. But hey, the movie exists. Let's move on to number 6, which is About My Father, which actually is maybe in deeper troubles than The Machine even is, because they're both kind of flopping, but About My Father kind of has a slightly higher budget. This movie made $4.2 million this weekend on a budget of $29 million, and there's no worldwide total to bump that up. So yeah, they need to cross over 58 million to be considered a success, and it's not looking like they're gonna get there. This also, believe it or not, doesn't seem like the kind of movie that would have a crazy hold. And also, similar to how like Book Club came out close to Mother's Day weekend and it, still flopped. We'll talk about that too in a little bit. I don't think releasing this movie around like a Father's Day, like not next weekend, like 3 weekends from now, I don't think that would have helped either. I think this is just the kind of movie that just, probably is better suited for streaming at this point, because that's what, unfortunately, audiences have been accustomed to watching, watching these kind of comedies on streamers. And it's very rare that one does as well as, something like The Lost City or, there was one recently, what was it? Fuck, I forgot. That's how rare it is. So there you go. Let's move on to number 7, which is Kandahar, the Gerard Butler Iraq movie. And it did not go over very well. It only got to number 7. In case you didn't know, this is from the same director as Gerard Butler's 2 other films, Greenland and Angel Has Fallen. He also did Snitch with Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. It's interesting to see, this guy who's technically been working for a couple years, and it seems like they're not really growing an audience or even growing, as far as like what kind of filmmaker they are. It's, I've seen it. It's just kind of, whatever. I saw it and now it's gone. And Gerard Butler was in it, and I couldn't tell if he was trying to hide his Scottish accent or not, but that shit came out. It's one of those movies. It made $2 million this weekend, and I'm not sure what the budget is. I'm assuming a little bit more expensive. Maybe not to the degree of like The Machine or About My Father. I genuinely don't know. What was the budget of Plane? Fuck, I forgot. I think that was also like 29 million, actually. It was like I think it was like a weird odd number. Fuck, I wish I still had that note somewhere. Anyways, as far as the director's previous films, the opening was 11 million below Snitch and 19 million below Angel Has Fallen, but it was 2 million above National Champions. And you might be wondering, what the fuck is a National Champion? And it's a movie that had J.K. Simmons in it. It's like a football movie that I didn't see. It kind of came out around COVID times when like theaters were trying to stay open. They're putting anything out there. I never saw this, but, it only had like a run of like the 100,000s. So not only did it have a higher opening weekend, but it also has already outgrossed that film by like 2 million. So, there you go. Good job. It still needs 40 million until it outgrosses Snitch, the real competition. And it's not gonna get there at all. Big bummer for Rick Roman Way. I don't know how to pronounce his last name. I am sorry. Moving on to number 8, we have You Hurt My Feelings, which is the new A24 Julia Louis-Dreyfus kind of like middle-aged comedy, melodrama, not really melodrama, like dramedy. I don't even think it's a dramedy. It's just kind of a sitcom comedy. It was fine. I remember liking it. I saw it a couple days ago and I remember liking it. It's kind of slowly fading from my mind though, if I'm going to be completely honest. It's kind of weird that A24 would put something like this out because it's not really, even as far as like their dramas go, it's not really even up to their usual standards. And even as far as like maybe Julia Louis-Dreyfus Seinfeld fans, it's not even completely for them either, if I'm going to be honest. Anyways, it only made 1.3 million this weekend. I'm assuming the budget was low, but we don't have an official number for that. As far as the director's previous Julia Louis-Dreyfus movie, Enough Said, with James Gandolfini, it had an opening 1 million above that, but, it still needs to outgross it by 16 million, and it's just, frankly, not going to do that, which, unfortunate, but that's just the reality of this thing, I guess. That's the landscape. The director made like a Ben Mendelsohn Netflix movie like a couple years ago, and unfortunately, because audiences, say it with me, class, audiences have been accustomed to watching these on streamers now, this is the kind of movie you would just drop on Netflix, and then that's the last you'd ever hear of it. So that's the end of that. Let's move on to number 9, which is Evil Dead Rise, making 1.05 million, adding to a domestic total of 66 million. Worldwide, it is sitting at 142 million. This one is probably leaving next weekend, as much as the other 4 movies that I just talked about, haven't had great openings. I think they'll be able to hold over a little more than this one, which is technically on video on demand now and has been out a little longer, but hey, it had a hell of a run. better than the run for Book Club The Next Chapter, which is coming in at number 10, closing out the video. It made $920,000 this weekend, not even in the millions, making $16 million in total, which adds to a worldwide total of $22 million. So yeah, they were able to cross over the initial production budget of $20 million, but still $18 million behind doubling it. And as far as the first Book Club, domestically they're behind that by $52 million, and worldwide $83. I don't know. I know why they probably made a sequel, because the first one was a surprise kind of hit, but why they wouldn't make a sequel right away, I don't know. Because now it's been too long is kind of the thing we're seeing here, you know? Like I've been saying, audiences have been accustomed to watching these kind of movies at home now. So why was, you know, I don't know. It is a bummer though. Anyways, now it's time for the fun part, the predictions for next week's top 5. Number 1, I gotta go with Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. Even though The Little Mermaid is looking to have a really, you know, in the 100 millions Memorial Day in total, you know, 95 for like a 3-day I think is enough, where Across the Spider-Verse has enough hype to get over. I don't think The Little Mermaid is gonna have a crazy hold where that's a competition, especially the love for Spider-Verse that has come since its domestic run. And I know some people might be thinking like, yeah, when Into the Spider-Verse came out, it made money, but it wasn't that much, and, you know, it was kind of looked at as like kind of a disappointment, even though it, you know, made its money back. But, you know, ever since that movie came out, the love for it has grown, you know, the audience for it has grown. So I think this one is going to open a lot bigger. And then number 2, I'm going with The Little Mermaid. Number 3, The Boogeyman. Number 4, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. I'm officially putting it down. It's going to have a better holdover and will overtake my number 5 prediction, Fast X. But what are your predictions for next week's top 5? Leave them in the comments below. And as always, thank you guys for watching. Make sure to subscribe. I'm Jackson Fulcher. See you guys next time.